Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Over the years, Michael Baldwin had witnessed many forms of betrayal in Genoa City, but nothing compared to the unsettling unraveling that now awaited him as he stood in the Chancellor Winter's dimly lit office, staring at the glowing screen that revealed the impossible truth behind the mysterious AI software theft that had rocked the corporate world to its foundation. The room was cold and still, lit only by the pale flicker of the computer monitor that hummed softly like a pulsing secret, itching to burst into daylight, and Michael's breath caught in his throat as he isolated the final encryption signature. This was because while everyone in Genoa City assumed the thief was a rival corporation or an anonymous hacker hiding somewhere behind offshore networks, the reality struck like thunder. IT was a woman, someone who walked freely among them, someone who blended seamlessly into their world of power, social circles, and quiet manipulation, someone no one would have suspected. This software, which had predictive algorithms that could map human behavior, track financial shifts before they happened, manipulate markets, and anticipate vulnerabilities within business infrastructures, had the potential to change everything. It was worth billions of dollars in influence and millions of dollars in tangible value. Whoever held it would have silent control over futures, alliances, dynasties, and boardrooms, power that even Victor Newman would see as a threat. Michael realized immediately why the crime was so detailed, clean, and careful. It was not the rash act of someone desperate for cash. Rather, it was a deliberate, strategic, and intimate act. He closed his eyes, remembering every hushed word, every glance across corporate tables in the past few months, how staff members had shifted in subtly frightened ways, how rumors suggested that someone or something had been planning behind the scenes. His heart raced as one memory after another fit together like parts of a puzzle. Long operating under the radar, the thief's intelligence was frequently undervalued, and her silence was taken for loyalty. And Michael felt the floor shift under him when her face showed up in the decoded metadata. A slight smile in a picture taken at an apparently benign tech conference. Claire Grace was the one. He was shocked to learn this because Claire had been gaining sympathy and trust in Genoa City by integrating herself with families who thought they understood her background, her suffering, and her reasons. Beneath her gentle smile, Michael saw the harsh calculating of a survivor who had learned to use every aspect of herself as a weapon. Her redemption story had been delicate, fragile, almost lovely. But it wasn't simply her involvement that was so devastating. It was also who she was working with. The more Michael investigated, the more obvious the pattern became. Funds laundered through foundations posing as recovery clinics, encrypted conversations, and meeting arrangements concealed in calendar metadata. Claire was not acting alone. She was the front. And behind her, shrouded in darkness and calculated stillness, stood Jordan, a man who had already split families apart and come back from obscurity with a vengeance. Michael's stomach turned over in horror as he recalled the mayhem Jordan had previously caused, the deception, the psychological manipulation, and the surgically precise emotional harm. Jordan had already turned Claire into a weapon, and now she had done it once more, but this time the battlefield was business conflict and technology instead of mental torture. Michael was aware that he couldn't just run to the authorities, Victor or Nikki, just yet. Claire would go, Jordan would disappear again, and the stolen software might be sold to the highest bidder. Possibly a private military organization, a foreign government, or even an international cartel seeking to manipulate global markets for financial gain. Every second counted. It was the weight of responsibility that made his hands shake, not terror. This was more than simply another case or controversy. It was a danger to all of Genoa City's powerful organizations, to partnerships that had been cultivated over many years, and to families who had battled valiantly to preserve control over their heritage. Michael was aware that everyone would be dragged into the aftermath when the truth came to light, including Lauren, Christine, Victor, Nikki, Jack, Devin, and Lily. Even worse, Jordan had always been skilled at deceiving the victim into thinking they were acting on their own, so Claire might not even think she is the bad guy. The confrontation was already in Michael's mind, complete with the tears, denial, anger, and betrayal. But below it all was the terrifying realization that Claire had known exactly what she was doing. He stepped away from the desk, pacing, forcing his breath to steady. He had to be careful. He required allies. Ironically, though, Victor Newman, The man who had once sworn that Claire would never have the opportunity to hurt his family again, was the first person who sprang to mind. Victor was many things, but no power on earth was more unrelenting than him when he vowed to defend his own. There would be no compromise, no peaceful resolution, and no mercy once Victor realized the truth about the impending storm. Corporate conflicts had previously occurred in Genoa City, but none that started with an AI system that could foresee chaos before it materialized. Michael was aware that this was just the start. The first domino was not the conclusion, but rather the identification of the thief. Everything would fall apart after he revealed Claire, including partnerships, marriages, and board meetings. Claire had gotten as deeply into people's personal lives as she had into their professional ones. She had built emotional ties and trusting relationships that would suddenly break like glass. And Jordan would be planning her next move somewhere out there, probably watching, waiting, and grinning in the dark. Michael straightened himself, his chest heaving under the weight of his knowledge. The battle lines had already been established, and Genoa City was about to experience another war. One that was psychological, technological, and nuanced. It would put relationships to the test. Trusts are questioned. And Claire, who had previously been viewed as damaged and in the process of rebuilding, would suddenly be viewed as something far more dangerous, a woman who has been undervalued for far too long. Michael didn't sleep that night. Instead, he paced his condo's shiny hardwood floors as the moon hung over Genoa City like a watchful eye, going over all the possible outcomes of the confrontation in his head. However, none of them seemed to be strong enough to match the seriousness of what was about to happen. By dawn, the city outside his window seemed surprisingly serene, the sun rising softly above shiny corporate skyscrapers, who had no idea that betrayal was about to be revealed behind their mirrored exteriors. Michael walked to Newman Media, the glass doors opening with a soft hiss as though he were entering a boardroom disguised as a battlefield. His footsteps reverberated as he made his way down the hallway toward the office where Claire Grace had meticulously constructed her image of redemption, one shaky apology and quiet smile at a time. When he walked in, Claire looked up, her blue eyes bright and innocent, her posture relaxed, her voice soft as she said hello. She was unaware. Or maybe she did, and the composure was just a feature of the persona she had perfected. The words formed like iron on Michael's tongue as he inhaled slowly. He skipped over the prelude. With a steady deep voice that cut through the silence like a blade, he said, "I know it was you." The room went cold. Although Claire's demeanor didn't break right away, there was a flash in her eyes and a shadow that moved across her features before vanishing once more behind the mask she had been wearing so convincingly for months. She murmured, "I don't know what you mean," but her voice betrayed her, shaking like thin glass on the verge of breaking. Michael moved closer and placed a folder on the desk, which contained timestamped data transfers, encrypted logs, screenshots, and a picture of Claire at the tech conference wearing a badge that she claimed she had received, by mistake. The folder also included communication links that led back to Jordan via a secure network that was set up to delete itself every 72 hours. Not even Claire's extraordinary ability to separate illusion from reality could save her from this. The evidence was indisputable. She just stared at the papers for a while, breathing irregularly and her chest rising and falling. Then something in her altered, hardening instead of disintegrating or collapsing. Like feeding a flame rather than putting it out. The tenderness that the residents of Genoa City had battled for, and believed in, vanished as her eyes met Michael's. What was left was older and sharper, shaped by survival and suffering. "You don't understand," she murmured, her voice becoming steel instead of brittle. "I wasn't forced by Jordan. My eyes were opened by her. Who gets to suffer and who gets to belong is decided by the people in this town, your so-called moral pillars. They make the decisions about which stories are weaponized and which are forgiven. I never had the opportunity to be anything other than what they had created me to be." The vitriol was restrained, articulate, and incredibly genuine. Michael's heart ached, because she was telling the truth. People had already been crushed in Genoa City. It had molded them into villains and then held them accountable for donning the wounds the town had inflicted. However, that did not excuse Claire's actions. Stealing AI technology intended to change the future was a weapon of worldwide repercussions, not merely retaliation. "This software will ruin lives," Michael muttered. "It will cause instability in markets, businesses, families, and everything else." Claire's mouth clenched. Or alter them, she retorted. Domination, manipulation, surveillance, and control were the foundations of empires built by people like Victor Newman. But using the tools they created makes it suddenly unethical? She spoke with the weight of someone who had spent her entire life seeing power be used against her, and who had at last figured out how to utilize power to her advantage. Then, suddenly, sharply, the office door opened, and Victor Newman himself entered, having been warned the instant Michael called for an urgent meeting. His steely steel eyes and stone-carved jaw filled the room like a storm front. The quiet itself seemed to tremble when Victor turned to face Claire. For this was personal, not merely corporate betrayal. Blood-level trust, the kind Victor seldom offered and never forgives, was betrayed in this way. Victor's voice was quiet, deadly, and almost whisper-soft, but it was laced with the rage of a man who had brought down entire empires with a single command. "Tell me it isn't true," he murmured. Claire did not recoil. She raised her chin. "It's true." And her voice was one of conviction rather than sorrow. Shortly after, Nikki entered the room, gasping as she saw Claire's face, the truth etched on every taut line of her body. Because Nikki had given Claire her heart, raised her and battled to give her a chance at a life free from pain, the grief that flashed across her features was heartbreaking. And now, destruction was being started using that love as a base. Only when Claire said Nikki's name did her voice crack. She muttered, "I wanted to be a part of this family. However, Genoa City households want obedience, thanks, silence, and secrecy. I wasn't spared. I was shaped." Nikki's eyes were full, but she remained silent. It was too raw of a wound. The betrayal was too profound. "Jordan told me the truth," Claire added, taking a step back as though she were preparing to speak. "The only language this world respects is power." At that moment, Michael witnessed Claire Grace's tragedy. A soul corrupted by the conviction that the world had left her with no other option, not by malice. Victor, however, remained unconvinced. He demanded to know where Jordan was. Claire's quiet was sufficient response. The lady who had shaped her into this version of herself was someone she would never betray. Her loyalty held even now, especially now. She would be destroyed by that loyalty. Victor looked at Michael. "We deal with this in a quiet manner," he stated. In other words, the police would not be contacted. There would be no public scandal over this. They would get rid of this. Buried. Managed. However, Claire spoke again before Michael could reply, and this time, her words pierced the room like a blade. "It's too late. The software has already been removed." The ensuing hush was oppressive. The air was frozen by Victor's gaze. Michael's stomach dropped. With a quivering palm covering her lips, Nikki took a sharp breath. "Jordan took it last night," Claire added in a tone that was almost kind. "She is already moving." Victor's face darkened into a deadly old grimace. They were late, and the conflict had already started. Claire was politely but sternly escorted out. Nikki was unable to observe. Victor kept his gaze fixed on her until the door shut. The challenge to the empire he had established came from inside, from his own attempt at atonement, rather than from the outside. The shockwaves were already affecting Michael. Newman Enterprises would mobilize. Within hours the Abbotts would hear. The press would rip at the corners. Jordan was grinning somewhere in the shadows of Genoa City, or somewhere far away. This wasn't a scandal anymore. This was the war's first move. The air itself appeared to thicken the night Jordan returned to Genoa City, as if the city realized something poisonous was re-entering its veins. A predator moved undetected somewhere behind the storm clouds as the rain slicked the streets, reflecting the neon glow of downtown. Jordan had always been a ghost, showing up, disappearing, and changing who she was like smoke, but this time she wasn't there to emotionally haunt the Newmans. She had come to complete what she had begun. The AI program was designed to infiltrate data streams, forecast financial crises, and affect human behavior. It was more than just a stolen brainchild. She saw it as poetic justice. The same form of deceit that the powerful had employed against her was now being utilized against them. Victor, meantime, stood by the glass of Newman Enterprises, his reflection a mix of rage and shrewdness. "Michael's words," she said, "it's already gone," replayed in his mind as the rain beat down on the glass. He had a gut feeling that Jordan wouldn't remain in hiding for very long. She lived on conflict. She wanted him to realize she had outplayed him and to see the turmoil coming. And it was unacceptable to Victor Newman. He turned abruptly when Nikki, calm but pale, walked into the room. Her eyes showed panic, but her voice was firm and low. Victor, you can't pursue her on your own. We've already had enough of this woman. Victor, however, said nothing. He saw this as repair rather than retaliation. Jordan ventured to face him on the battlefield of intelligence and technology, after he had ruined his family's tranquility and corrupted a girl they had attempted to save. It was war. Jordan packed discs into a lockable case while moving carefully across town in a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Although her hands remained steady, her mind was racing with memories of all the rejections, sneers, and dismissals that had motivated her to fight for what she believed in. Jordan had vowed to protect her from the same forces who deceived her, and now Claire's visage tormented her as her protégé was taken prisoner. Jordan muttered into the night, "You were supposed to be stronger," his voice quivering with a mixture of sadness and rage. "This was meant to be finished by you." However, she would complete it on her own. By entering a final line of code into the system, she started a countdown sequence that would release pieces of the AI into public networks, creating an irreversible information cascade that would be difficult for anyone to control, not even Victor Newman. Wet from the storm, Michael rushed into the office back at Newman. "I located her trail," he exclaimed, panting. "The industrial district is where she is. She's going to let loose, she's moving quickly." Victor's eyes grew gloomy. "Then we stop her." Nikki grabbed him by the arm as he was already heading for the door. She started to say, "Victor, if you go." But he interrupted her with a silent, deadly assurance. "Everything we've built will perish if I don't." He was gone after that. The inevitable confrontation had the feel of a movie. With the storm raging outside and Jordan's silhouette highlighted by lightning, Victor ordered the warehouse door to swing open. Instead of recoiling at the sight of him, she grinned. A sly, icy grin. "I anticipated your arrival," she remarked. "Victor, you can't resist control, can you?" His voice sounded like steel and gravel. "Coming back here was a mistake." Jordan's head cocked. "No. Underestimating how much I wanted you to see this was my lone error." She pointed to the flickering screens that were streaming data, including Chancellor Winter's reports, Newman files, and even private Newman chats, all of which were decrypting in real time. With sparkling eyes, she declared, "Every secret this town conceals will be revealed. Your empire will be reduced to ashes by the truth." Victor took a step forward, his voice steady and measured. "You believe this to be true? This is devastation. The life of that young woman has already been ruined by you. Before you feel powerful, how many more do you want to destroy?" Jordan's visage broke for the first time, revealing a weakness in her armor. Michael, however, came up behind her and pulled the control console's main power lever before she could react. The monitors turned black as sparks flew. Jordan whirled and yelled, but it was too late. Just seconds before it was finished, the upload had been halted. As Victor moved forward, his eyes blazing, the storm outside raged. Jordan cried, "You can't stop what's already begun," as she backed toward the exit, the rain pelting her. She gave one more stare before vanishing into the night, leaving just the echoes of her vow. Wet and immobile, Victor watched as the night engulfed her. Michael's chest heaved as he turned toward him. He said, "She's still out there." Victor's response was as icy as ice. "Then we locate her." Jordan's laughter, quiet, far away, and frighteningly sure that this was just the beginning, floated through the rain someplace out in the shadows.